Her letter threatens me, police officers, state troopers, sheriffs, judges, and other officials with prison time.
Well, someone is in very big trouble, and that someone is Bob Ferguson. He is the governor of Washington State, and he was sent a letter from Pam Bondi saying, if you continue to run a sanctuary state, you and other elected officials, you might be arrested.
Washington State, and these are her words now, has been identified as a so-called sanctuary jurisdiction. By the way, on grounds that her letter makes no effort whatsoever to explain.
I don't know if the governor remembers, but back in June of 2024, federal agents were ambushed almost every single night by protesters, and federal agents virtually got zero help from the local police. And that was in Seattle, a city in Washington. So we will be going over all of these new developments in Washington. Now, before we start the video, make sure to please like this video. It's the #1 way you guys are helping this channel, and it also helps others see the videos as well. It's a massive help. Thank you guys so much. Let's go.
So let me start by saying that I recently received a letter from U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. I think you all have a copy of that. It purports to notify me that Washington State, and these are her words now, has been identified as a so-called sanctuary jurisdiction. That's her line. By the way, on grounds that her letter makes no effort whatsoever to explain.
There is literally a law called Keep Washington Working Act. It was passed back in 2019. When you go through this law, it is the most sanctuary state law you have ever seen. I mean, can local law enforcement agencies collect information regarding persons' immigration or citizenship status? No, unless a crime was committed or unless you need it for an investigation. You scroll down, it's basically all about how law enforcement, they can't cooperate with ICE or Homeland Security operations for deportations. But what happens is, in a lot of these states, this also means the local police are very hesitant to even be around Homeland Security when they need the help.
Please stop throwing things at the officers. All we want you to do is just move out of the driveway. That's all. All you need to do is move. Please move.
These protesters were able to surround a federal building, create a barricade, plan an attack, and the local police let that all happen, and then they eventually show up. But the problem the Trump administration has is that this is a common theme with sanctuary cities or states, where the local police, again, are very hesitant to assist or work with Homeland Security because it can be perceived that they're helping out or encouraging these ICE operations.
Let me be clear. The Seattle Police Department does not engage in immigration enforcement activities. We adhere to Washington state law, which limits our involvement with federal immigration authorities for enforcement purposes.
Real quick, if you haven't already, make sure to please subscribe to my channel so I can keep you guys updated with stories just like this. There are a ton of lawmakers who are under threat of being arrested or charged with these sanctuary policies, so make sure to please subscribe. So, the governor of Washington is upset with Pam Bondi for giving a very vague description about sanctuary status, yet that was the chief of police of Seattle also giving a very vague description as to what he can and can't do as far as the limited involvement with federal agents. Which is why Pam Bondi reminded everyone in Washington, if you're in the police, if you're a state trooper, if you're a governor, if you are a lawmaker, if you keep promoting and enforcing these sanctuary policies, you could also be arrested.
She refers to unidentified policies and practices within Washington State that she asserts violate federal law, once again, without any explanation whatsoever. The letter goes on to invoke federal obstruction, conspiracy, and harboring statutes that carry criminal penalties with prison time.
I will let you guys decide if you think this is getting into the gray area of harboring or obstruction. Straight from Washington's law, should local law enforcement agencies honor immigration detainers, civil immigration warrants, or other hold requests? No. And then again, when you have ICE trying to do their job, a federal agency, and local law enforcement knows but doesn't cooperate with federal agents about an illegal immigrant in the area, this is why the Trump administration is classifying this as harboring an illegal immigrant or also obstructing.
Bondi even threatens that state officials, including some of the folks who joined me today, by the way, just so we're clear, even threatens that state officials, and I'm quoting now from her letter, operating under the color of the law, using their official position to obstruct federal immigration enforcement efforts and facilitating or inducing illegal immigration may be subject to criminal charges. That is breathtaking. And a letter like this cannot be normalized. Her letter threatens me, police officers, state troopers, sheriffs, judges, and other officials with prison time. Why? Because our state legislature passed a bipartisan law that appropriately and lawfully limits the diversion of state and local resources to federal immigration enforcement.
So here's the thing. The governor is well aware of this entire law. He's well aware of his sanctuary status, yet he's claiming he doesn't understand what Pam Bondi means. Now, I will say, in favor of the governor, in favor of mayors, you are allowed to limit your cooperation with federal agencies, but not to the extent that it actually damages or disrupts the mission for federal agencies, and that's the problem that Pam Bondi has, and that's the problem that the Trump administration has, and it looks like they have plenty of receipts to back this up.
Washington State is proud to be a welcoming community that values immigrants and refugees' contributions to our economy and our cultural fabric. Pam Bondi seems to believe that cavalierly citing criminal statutes and personally threatening me, a democratically elected governor, will result in compromising the values of my state. That is not going to happen. Pam Bondi seems to think and seeks to have Washington State bend the knee to a Trump administration that day by day drags us closer to authoritarianism. That's not going to happen either. I am not intimidated by Pam Bondi or the president. Nobody standing behind me is intimidated by Pam Bondi or the president.
Just to clarify, it wasn't only Washington who got this letter. There were other leaders as well who are in sanctuary cities or states that got a letter from Pam Bondi. Here's what she has to say about all of this.
Are they complying? I mean, how's this working?
Some are not. We've already sued New York. We've already sued Illinois. And if they don't comply, we're going to sue them. We're going to take away your federal funding. You're going to have to comply. We're going to send in law enforcement. If you're not going to do your job, we're going to do it for you to keep our citizens safe. Our great men and women in the National Guard are ready to go. They have been working hand in hand with our park services here in D.C. Again, everybody is working so great together.
I do want to point this out. In Washington, D.C., this is my theory. You can leave how you feel about this in the comments. Washington, D.C. right now is going very well for the Trump administration, sending in all of their federal assets and showing all of America this is what happens when you work with federal assets. The local police, National Guard, all the federal agencies, they have eliminated a ton of crime in Washington. So even Pam Bondi, she referenced Washington, D.C. I truly do think this is going to be the justification for the American people. You see what's happening in Washington? People are safe. Let us do it to sanctuary cities to make them even more safe.
The Metro Police are loving it. The Transit Authority Police, Larry, down in the Metro, they're loving what we're doing because they can actually now arrest people. They have federal officers with them. They're buddied up, and they are making arrests, keeping Americans safe and keeping our capital safe. You know, families want to come here. Today I was looking, and there were so many families out because kids are still on summer vacation. All of our museums are free. The Smithsonian is free. You have our beautiful monuments. You have the zoo. And families deserve to be able to go there. Listen, our law enforcement officers are telling us that people are coming up to them on the street, and they said a lot of people are walking by whispering, saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. They're hearing stories every single night and day of people saying that they feel safe now to walk their own neighborhood where they live because of what our great men and women in law enforcement are doing at the directive of the president.
Here's the thing. If Donald Trump wanted to send in all of these federal agencies right now into sanctuary cities or sanctuary states, we saw what happened in Los Angeles. There were a lot of riots, a lot of protesters, a lot of people questioning why would you do that. A lot of this comes down to the information side of things. If you are subscribed to my channel, you know that Homeland Security will respond to every single lawmaker who makes a false claim, every single news outlet that makes a false claim. They put them on blast. So when Pam Bondi is promoting this idea of federal agencies in Washington, D.C., she's absolutely correct. And the stats back her. People are happy in Washington. People are excited that the city is safe. So now that there is a test subject, Washington, D.C., that seems to have gone really well for the Trump administration, it's going to give a lot more assurance to the Trump administration and to voters. Again, for the Republican Party, this is the move. Go after sanctuary states, go into those cities, send in the federal assets, and now that Donald Trump has the backing of statistics, it probably will work very well in his favor. And we will probably be seeing more sanctuary cities get this treatment of federal agents coming into your area. But what Pam Bondi is talking about, they also want to challenge, the Trump administration wants to challenge these states in court. And guess what? I do think the Trump administration, it's way more in his favor that these sanctuary states have been breaking policies. That's my personal opinion.
Please stop throwing things at the officers. All we want you to do is just move out of the driveway. That's all.
And this looks like to be the Seattle Police Department. And again, this was back in June of 2024. All of these protesters were showing up. They were already getting a little more violent against the federal agents. And the question from the Trump administration is, where were the police officers? Why did you guys not show up? And a lot of times, if you're subscribed to my channel, we've been following a lot of these stories since day one. The officers don't show up until the very end, when it already gets way too violent. And we also saw scenes just like this in Seattle. This is the Seattle Police Department getting attacked by their own residents, and they showed up after a federal building was absolutely decimated. Some protesters tried to light the building on fire. The protesters were already surrounding the building for hours, and the police department never showed up. And look, this is what happens. The police are told you can have limited cooperation with ICE or Homeland Security, and this is what happens with the limited cooperation. It's such a vague law that the police officers basically have to wait until it gets out of hand, and then they step in. And look, these protesters were here to protest the federal agents, but the police had no choice but to show up because it was getting so out of hand. You could actually look up my videos, just look up Seattle protesters, and we covered every single day, every single aspect of this story. It was insane how long it took for the police to finally show up and assist the federal agents after they were all assaulted.
How is Governor Ferguson responding to Bondi's threat?
Steve, Washington Governor Bob Ferguson stood before cameras and with his cabinet behind him to say he will not be bullied and he will not comply with the terms of the Attorney General's letter, hinting at a potential legal fight between the state of Washington and the White House. Now, you may remember that last week the Attorney General Pam Bondi wrote a letter to the state of Washington. And
by the way, the terms are very simple. Cooperate with federal agents. The Trump administration is not asking that you give every single detail of every single aspect of what you're doing as a local police. They just want a little cooperation. If federal agents come in the area and they are doing deportations and there is a known illegal immigrant in the area, they want the local police to say, yeah, there are people in the area. You can even come over here in this part of the city to help out. That's all they want.
And to the city of Seattle, a sharply worded letter suggesting that they needed to respond by today on how they would comply with federal immigration policy, saying the state would lose potentially federal funding and face civil or criminal penalties. Ferguson said he would defend the Keep Washington Working Act of 2019, what others have called sanctuary status, and not be bullied. I pressed the governor on case law that he's prepared to argue, given the federal government has threatened to withhold federal money in the past to get states to comply with policy.
I can't believe all of these people might be arrested by the Trump administration or the DOJ for not complying with the new ask or the new need to please cooperate with Homeland, cooperate with DOJ. Let's just work together to make your state a safer place.
Thinking back to 1987, when it came to federal highway transportation dollars and changing of the drinking age, and states fell in line there. What case law are you citing here that you believe you can stand behind in a fight with the Attorney General?
Yeah, I think I would turn that question around if that's okay, Chris, because keep in mind, it's Pam Bondi threatening us, okay? That's how this is starting. And look, as a lawyer, okay, when you get a letter like that, what is typical, if someone's threatening to file a lawsuit against you, what is common, what is just everyday lawyering, is you lay out your legal case, okay? You cite to cases, you provide your facts. None of that exists in this letter. It is all posturing.
I will say the Trump administration, oftentimes they're known for being vague, but I do think there is an implication here from the Trump administration that you should know what sanctuary policies are, the division of local police with federal agencies, things like that. And again, a governor, mayor, people in charge of like National Guards or people in charge of security forces for their state, they are allowed to limit cooperation. However, the Trump administration is arguing, like I keep saying, when you don't allow for cooperation and you're actually getting in the way of not helping, this is where you're crossing the line. So I really do think the Trump administration is implying you should know exactly what we mean by sanctuary status.
That's all it is. It's all threats. That's all it is.
We have not yet received a statement from the Attorney General Pam Bondi or the Department of Justice, but we immediately received one from Washington GOP Chairman Jim Walsh, who argues Ferguson should comply with federal law. And quoting now, Bob Ferguson is putting essential functions of state government at risk in order to perpetuate a foolish political fight with the federal government. We'll talk more about those potential financial implications.
And what this all comes down to, at the end of the day, it's always money. Now, when it comes to Washington, and really every other state, having federal funding is a very good thing. So we will just have to see how this all goes down. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really do think Washington State, man, they are playing a dangerous game with the Trump administration, because I really do think the Trump administration, they're not throwing out these threats without receipts or without knowing they have a good chance of winning in the courtroom. So thank you so much for being here. God bless, and we'll see you all later.